Okay, so in my lap, I have some of my favorite things in the whole world. And my sweet, sweet friend, Miss Lizzie Bella, did a thing kind of like this. And I had been thinking about it, and I thought, well, I'll do it now, and I'll post a video response. Because I've had a lot of caffeine, and despite the fact that it's 1:30 in the morning, I am not sleeping anytime soon. So, these are not my favorite books ever in the whole world because I really couldn't narrow it down. But I grabbed 5, 7-ish books off my bookshelf, and these are ones that I recommend to people. The first one is a little controversial because the author, J.T. Leroy, doesn't actually exist. J.T. Leroy is actually, for a long time, for years, everyone thought that J.T. Leroy was this young guy in his 20s that was really like shy and reserved, and there was this whole like persona created and like a website, and he communicated mainly through emails, and it turns out that he didn't exist. He's actually the invention of a woman who was in her 40s at the time, and she wrote these stories and published them under the name of this boy J.T. Leroy that supposedly lived this crazy life and whatever. But it doesn't change the fact that the stories are good. She's a good writer, and this, and then I also couldn't find my copy of it, but The Heart is Deceitful Above All Things is this one, and it's short stories that are supposedly autobiographical about J.T. Leroy's life, which it's a good thing that he doesn't exist because they're pretty fucked up. And then there's one called Sarah that actually I love, 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 love that book. And when I found out that J.T. Leroy didn't exist, I was like, really? Are you fucking kidding me? But I'm kind of over it now because the writing is really good. So I recommend his slash her, I don't remember her real name, books. The second one is a complete 180 in terms of subject matter. This is Stormfront by Jim Butcher. This is the first of his Dresden Files books, and I think there's 10 or 11 of them out now. I don't have the last one because it's only in hardback, and I don't buy hardback books because they're too expensive. You'll see my one exception at the very end. The very first book, Stormfront, not amazingly well written. He gets a lot better as time goes on, as the series goes on. But what he does is he creates a really interesting world and a really, really interesting characters and great plots. So if you're into science fiction at all, Harry Dresden is this guy on the cover, and he is a wizard, and he advertises in the phone book. And that's how he gets his clients in modern day Chicago. So it's very, very interesting. If you saw the TV show, I saw one episode of it, it's really not much like this at all. But yeah, get the books, read them, they're good brain candy. I love sci-fi fantasy books for my brain candy. Back to a collection of short stories. This is Tim O'Brien's The Things They Carried. And most people have probably read the title story, The Things They Carried. It's a fantastic, fantastic story, and it's amazing, and it'll just kind of stick in your head. The rest of the stories are all interconnected, and a lot of them have even more emotional impact or even more interesting and touching than The Things They Carried, which is freaking amazing. So it's a good book. I recommend The Things They Carried by Tim O'Brien. He's fantastic. Next is my comfort book, which is weird. I'm just going to say this right up front, that a book about the bubonic plague breaking out in Algeria in the 60s should not be my comfort book, but it totally, totally is. I read this when I was really, really dealing with my father having Parkinson's disease, which he still has. Obviously, you can't get rid of it. But when I was really starting to have to deal with it, and not when he started to get really, really bad. And for some reason, Camus in general, but this book especially, gives me a lot of hope. And that we are not powerless. The power that we have are our choices, and even if our choices are shitty, we still have choices. So even if someone's holding a gun to your head, you have a choice. You can choose to get shot in the head. So the choices are shitty, but you have choices. Anyway, The Plague, I read it every year because I guess I'm weird. I don't know. It's very comforting to me. Next is just really, it's written for the layman, so don't freak out. It's called The User's Guide to the Brain. And it's about not only, it starts off with sort of the mechanical, biological basis of the brain, and then kind of goes into emotions and behavior. And it's really interesting. I'm reading it for the second time. I'm about halfway through, because I'm not going to lie, I didn't get all of it the first time through. I'm a social scientist, and with a little bit of biology, but I'm not a hard scientist. So I got a lot out of it, but I'm gonna need definitely another read through. But it's really interesting. Yeah, it starts off talking about like how the brain develops and what parts there are of it, and goes on to sort of behavior and perception and shyness and things like that. The next one is a book I think everyone should read and actually do like the exercises and the works in it. It's called My Gender Workbook, and it's by Kate Bornstein. And I did this for the first time when I was in college, and I was 20-ish years old, and I was like, I don't need to do a gender workbook. I'm a girl. I'm comfortable being a girl. And this totally broke my mind open and changed my views of gender completely. And I'm really, really thankful. And then also Diane DeMassa, if you know Hothead Paisan, she did all the, I'm trying to look for, she did all like the illustrations and the drawings inside of it. So she's also amazing. I recommend if you can get a book like the collection of Hothead Paisan. I don't have it with me right now. It's probably in my room. I read it a lot. That's really good. But Kate Bornstein is amazing. And I think this book, if you're uncomfortable in your gender, if you're not sure about your gender, if you're totally comfortable in what gender role you're in, I think everybody should do this workbook, because yeah, it'll just blow your mind open and makes me understand things a lot better, and ask a lot of really important questions. And I'll talk about gender one day, because I don't have typical thoughts on gender, which partly comes from reading this book and then just partly comes from my life. But anyway, next one is a scientist book, and this is like the third time I'm reading this because it's physics, and physics hurts my brain. Like, I love it. I'm so fascinated by it. But I wish I was one of those people who could read things about physics and just get it. But this is about string theory, and it's by Brian Greene. And if you find any book by Brian Greene, the physicist, you should read it. He writes amazingly well. It's written for the layman, again, and he's very, very interesting. But it's really hard for me to understand string theory just because it's so far outside of my perception. But I like it a lot, and I'm reading it again. So hopefully more will sink in this time. And then the next one is my favorite book, the book that I probably use the most because I am a giant freaking nerd, especially when it comes to birds. This is the Sibley Guide to Birds. And this was just amazing. Ever since probably Audubon's Birds of America, there hasn't been, which was in the 1800s, like 1850s, something like that, is when Audubon's Birds of America came out. And since then, there hasn't been a book that has been so freaking amazing than Sibley's Guide to Birds. And this came out 10 years ago. I'm sure I can look it up. Anyway, so this guy, David Allen Sibley, has drawings and descriptions of birds from everywhere and all these amazing things. This isn't really a field guide. It's a little heavy to be a field guide, but there are smaller field guide versions of this, of like, you know, eastern birds, western birds, whatever. But if you like birds at all, and I do, and I was, just because I was kind of raised like that, I didn't know that other people didn't read about birds or talk about birds the way my family did. But this is amazing, and the illustrations are amazing. He painted that on the cover. All of his illustrations are all hand painted, and they are gorgeous. Look at those flamingos. Look at that spoonbill. Okay, so that's almost 10 minutes. I could talk about books probably for hours and hours and hours, but I will stop right now. Okay, so, all right, turn off. Bye-bye.